So while we still wait for a few people to come in, I just would like to do a little bit of an intro. So good morning and happy May 7th. Welcome to today's special edition of Innovation Guelph's Leaders Helping Leaders session, co-organized with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. I'm your host for the session. I'm Mickey Campo, Program Manager at Innovation Guelph, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session on navigating through turbulent times. To support entrepreneurs navigating the COVID-19 crisis, Innovation Guelph, a nonprofit regional innovation center, has created this series of online sessions to help business owners and leaders maintain their momentum, continue innovating, and leverage opportunities to help them through the many challenges and opportunities that this crisis brings with it. And today's session is brought to you in partnership with 5 other fantastic resources and centers for entrepreneurs. Our friends at Invest in Guelph, the Business Center Guelph Wellington, Spark Center in Oshawa, Launch Lab in Kingston, the Accelerator Center in Waterloo. So thank you to the 5 organizations for being part of today's session. Today's Leader Helping Leaders session will be co-presented by Steven Karpenko, Senior Export Advisor, Business Capacity and Readiness Branch, Business Partnerships and Programs Division of the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade for Ontario, or shorter terms, MEDJCT. Brad Fitzsimmons is the other co-presenter today. He is an Innovation Guelph mentor and serial entrepreneur. He's also the creator of the COVID-19 Business Response Canvas that he's going to introduce you to today. And yes, we will be sharing this with you today after today's session. So before I hand the reins over, I do need to let you know that today's session will be recorded and shared. So please turn off your videos and mute your mics during the presentation. We have set aside some time to have an interactive Q&A period after the lesson, so please raise your hand or submit a question by either using the icon at the bottom of your screen or typing into the Zoom chat option at any point throughout the presentation. Please address any of your questions to either everyone in the chat or directly to me or to Wes, and we will make sure Stephen and Brad get a chance to answer as many of your questions as possible during the final 30 minutes of today's session. So when you sign up, there'll be a quick little poll, and if you could answer those questions before signing off, that'd be greatly appreciated. So quick and harmless, I promise. But without any further ado, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand things over to Stephen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mickey. I'm just getting my screen ready here. Go up to the top. All right, so thank you very much. I just have my video on so everyone can see me, but as I get going, I'll turn that off in order to just spare the bandwidth or whatever regarding the video. Here's our agenda. What we're gonna do, Brad and I, is basically set the stage, kind of put things in context of the current environment, work through some tools and things that you can take immediate action on, and then at the end, we'll basically prepare you to come back as the COVID-19 crisis kind of eases a bit, and then things move back to, obviously not normal, things have probably changed permanently, but it's a little bit more normal than we've been experiencing. So the first thing is to just set the stage. The challenges facing Ontario businesses, the ones are in front of you here, and those are the ones we were kind of facing last year, the year before, and they were kind of coming into focus in Q4 of 2019. And there were many of them, and they're not necessarily things that were temporary. Attracting, retaining talent, for example, in the innovation sector is a very real challenge. It maybe seems to be less so right now, but in reality, that's just pushed into the background a bit. It's coming back. Closing of businesses, consolidation, kind of the uncertainty of where the competition is and shifting of that, real-time data and analytics, et cetera, consumer preferences changing. So there's a lot of challenges that have been facing Ontario businesses, and we've all been doing our best to really react and adapt to those. Just to keep that in context moving forward, that's what we're coming back to as well. And so there's that plus adapting to the new normal. One of the things that's really important for all of our companies is to be able to take the pulse of what's going on and to keep a finger on that pulse. And the first part of that is the external early warning signs. And so there are things that we can pay attention to or be exposed to that really we could choose to ignore. The reality is that if the bank controls get a little tighter, we can navigate around that. If we hear negative economic news, we can choose to do something or not. If our supply chain access to materials gets a little bit more challenging, prices go up, again, we just kind of can go with the flow with that, or we can have a little bit more integrated planning process. And I say this as, what is your daily news feed? So what is it, the information that you're getting kind of on a daily basis that is informative, it is kind of in line with the sector that you're working in, the business that you're in, and also kind of points you towards actions that you might be able to take. So that daily news feed, so the early warning signs, typically external, are the first kind of main thing in terms of taking the pulse of the industry and where your business is. For example, economic trends. In Q4 of 2019, things were really kind of pointing towards a slowdown and a recession in 2020. Nobody really knew what it was. Of course, the COVID-19 crisis couldn't have been anticipated, but nonetheless, there was data on the radar screen in terms of a growing productivity gap between us and the United States. And a lot of that has to do with the technology adoption rates and investments. So the US was continuing to invest in new technology, productivity enhancing factory, Internet of Things, factory of the future, that sort of stuff, automation. And we started to lag a little bit behind from, say, where we were 5 years ago. So that was an early warning indicator that could have been a signal to manufacturers to start planning for return to investment, investing in technology, acquiring funds, meeting with bankers, et cetera. And on the right-hand side, there's another type of indicator, which is real GDP. You can see that in manufacturing and certainly in utilities, which are kind of an indicator of manufacturing activity, that things were trending in a negative direction in Q4 as well. So those are just examples of those early warning signs. Kind of bringing it to the present, I thought this information would be good so that everyone sees that, hey, you're not alone, and that there is some solid data out there. And I'm an optimist, so taking the kind of encouraging point of view is that 67% of businesses are either open or fully open in Ontario as of April 24th, so just 2 weeks ago. That to me is an encouraging sign that everyone's given it their best, has positive expectations, et cetera. So 67% in Ontario, and nationally it jumps to 72%. So I guess in some ways the pessimistic side might say, oh, things are way worse than they are. But in reality, when we look at the data, there are a lot of businesses who are, I guess, not on the sidelines, kind of in the game, staying in the game. And to me, that's an indicator that the competition is still there as well. So if you're in a fairly competitive industry, that nobody's really standing by, that we're really kind of chomping at the bit to get back to it. And that is not just in the province, but nationally as well. And then when you look at the reason businesses closed, the same survey, April 24th, only 19% because of a lack of customer demand or lack of perceived customer demand. And what that says to me is the customers are still out there too. It's just a matter of now we have to find a way to get back to them, to make it easy for our customers to do business with us again, regardless of the fact that things are changing, and what I call the new normal is going to be part of the getting back to it. And Brad will go into that a little bit in terms of business models and shifts. In terms of where we're going, here's a slide that is the Ing Financial base case, which is where they think, not worst case, not best case, but kind of on average, where they see things going. This is US data. I don't think Canada is going to be that much different, but you can see that in the next few quarters, in the first quarter of 2020, which is, we've come out of that now, we're now very much in the second quarter, you can see that big dip. But then they're expecting a big gain, a kind of a turnaround in that in the third quarter of 2020, and then heading into the rest of the year, and then maybe next year returning to a little bit more normalcy. Will that come to pass? Who knows? But it's probably a pretty good guess, and it also fuels the sense of urgency, I suppose, in terms of getting businesses back up and running, and that in these scenarios, when they kind of run the data, that you actually see that there is a turnaround possibility and that it's really important to be ready for that. So the next thing is your own key performance indicators for your company, and being able to take the pulse of operations kind of on a day-to-day basis. And as Brad will probably explain, things are going to be changing on a monthly, maybe weekly, maybe even daily basis, depending on, there could be high-level decisions that are made in terms of the regulatory environment that could impact your business today. There could be a trend that's looking out maybe a few weeks, and a good example of that would be, say, the oil industry. If you're in the energy sector, that's literally changing kind of on a weekly, monthly basis. The food industry is changing, and a lot of new business models that we're starting to see, and then retail somewhere in the middle. So how do you take your own company's pulse in terms of the key performance indicators that suggest whether you're on track or not? So examples here, and these are probably, I would say, the 10 most important ones, and you could certainly build your dashboard around these 10 and you'd be doing great. So what's your cash position? What's your market share in terms of your competitive positioning? How are you doing in terms of receivables and payables? Communication with the staff, your profit and loss situation, your inventory, major customers, product quality. So these are really the key performance indicators. And so not just for now, so managing through today's environment, I think it's a great idea to get a handle on these things. And even if it's just a spreadsheet that you put together quickly, put some numbers down, and that becomes your plan, and then see how you're doing, and maybe create columns for weeks or months. I think a little bit more frequently than quarterly, and to check up on these things. And some of them you'll, in terms of like your cash position, you literally want to be checking on daily and at most weekly basis. So these KPIs are not just for going forward and implementing a planning and monitoring system that will really pay off, but it's also for right now. Some of them are things that you can be looking at, and we'll get into a little bit more of an action plan in terms of the things you can do right now. And then those KPIs, basically, if you roll them up, it becomes like a dashboard or an indicator. Lights, when you go from green down to red, so it's kind of the progression of different risk factors as you go along. And so having some sort of way of just your company's risk temperature. And I think that as owners and entrepreneurs, you have that because you built the company and you've grown the company. But as your company grows and you bring in people, maybe it's a management team, somebody from outside, if you have these kind of systems, and they're very simple when you look at it, if you have these kind of systems and ability to have that quick meeting or that quick information sharing, that you get everyone on the same page, and you can really take action to resolve any negative trends that you may perceive, and actually get ahead of things. So let's identify some of the challenges associated with managing through turbulent times. And I've really focused on the ones that you can take action now. When Mickey distributes the slides, I've kind of got a little bit more extensive list in each of the categories, and you'll see what I mean. But for right now, let's focus on ones that you can look at today and take action today to get you through this difficult time. First thing is related to marketing, and do you have clear market positioning? So what I mean with that is really get past the theory, but what is it right now? Like if your business is closed, yet there's still passers-by or street traffic, or you're close to a transportation or a bus stop. If you're putting some messaging in front of your customers, is it clear so they know that right now, today, you're still open for business and what it is that you're open for business for? Like we repair something that's important, or you know, we're now open. So not everyone's aware of, for example, the closed business and the phase 1, 2, and 3 opening. If you're aware of that and you need to communicate, is it really clear to your customers? When it comes to production, are you filling today's orders? Are you shipping product? If you promise somebody a release of software, are you still on top of it so that you can get it out the door when you said you would? And so that's something for today. And do you have excellent levels of customer service? So somebody is actually doing business with you right now, making sure that that's the best experience that they can have, and that they're going to come back tomorrow and they're going to make sure their friends know that you're open and available. So that comes through excellent customer service. Here's a couple examples just from my neighborhood, a music store, a restaurant, a pub. They're basically just like, putting out whatever signage they can, got a website up and running and saying, hey, we're open, visit our website. And from that linkage, and especially with, I say it's an online capability to serve loyal customers. 6 months ago, we were saying website to help you export or get on Amazon and sell to another country. I think now the opportunity for online is that you can get your loyal customers in your neighborhood, shopping locally, back engaged with your business instead of going somewhere else for the stuff they need today. And it's fairly inexpensive to do. You can get a website up and running with some, you may not even need the payment capability. Maybe that's when they come to your shop. But you can get a website up and running to do this basic communication, put your catalog up for a few $100s and a weekend of work, assuming you've got someone who can help you with that. So it's something you can do and take action with today. In terms of competition, you can certainly adjust your prices. That takes no time. If that's something you think that right now discounting will be a benefit to your customers, they may value and appreciate that from you. Knowing that it's not long-term, but that right now you are willing to lower your prices to help them out as well. Are you exceeding your competition? So assuming that you do have a competitor or competitors that are still out there, are they one of these businesses that are still open, and are customers maybe going to leave you and go to a competitor? So coming back to that, what can you do today to really enhance that customer experience so that you retain those loyal customers? And the last thing is, can you utilize idle talent? So maybe your need for labor or your need for office help, whatever, is a little bit reduced right now. Maybe those people can be doing something else that can help in terms of that customer experience and that customer facing stuff that you can do to attract and retain those loyal customers. In terms of sales and distribution, if you're in a bigger organization that has a sales force, maybe now is the time to crack open something and go after a new sale, go after a new market. Usually when the priority is and order books are full, that you're fulfilling orders, the sales staff's engaged with customers, taking care of customer concerns, making sure everything's awesome. But maybe right now there's less of that going on, in which case get that sales force and don't be afraid of the rejection that might come with it, and get out there and look at your customer base and find out, are you diversified as much as you would want to be, and then create a plan around that to say, okay, let's call on these businesses. We've been putting it off, but now is a great opportunity, again, utilizing maybe some downtime and everyone just really wanting to get involved, make a difference, and prepare for the turnaround. And then in terms of management information, do you have monthly financial statements? Are you reviewing them right now? Or are you maybe focused a little bit more on the gloomy side of things, but maybe it's not so bad? Get those financial statements out and take a really close look and sharpen your pencil and cut expenses where you can, and look at your pricing and go into the details in terms of your customer list and what the margins are there. Do you prepare regular budgets? Now is a great time to say, okay, this is my survival budget, this is my recovery budget, and this is our back to normal budget. And what do those three things look like? And again, a great investment of your time in terms of turning things around, and something that you can do today. And then in terms of finance, I kind of left this in for last, but I think it's probably the most important, which is your cash flow. And when you're in a turnaround situation, I think that's what we can call it, where our priority right now is on surviving, and then the priority shifts to thriving, and making sure that we have the cash and the means to get through today in order that we have something to invest in tomorrow. And so when you think that way, and I know Brad's going to touch on that, that really comes down to monitoring your cash flow, and do you know what your cash obligations are? So where money's coming in, where money's coming out. And even though kind of in your gut and you know your bank balance is, maybe it's important to write it down and to really do it to make you feel better and to give you that confidence that that you can get through tomorrow, and you'll have gas left in the tank to invest as you recover. Number two is knowing gross margins. So both of your products and like what's your cost of goods if you're a retailer, or you're reselling, if you're in production, even if you're in software development, how much is it costing me, and what are my margins based on my selling price? Do you know what those are? And do you also know, kind of on a customer basis, who your profitable customers are versus those who aren't? Again, a great exercise that you can go through today. It sets the stage for tomorrow and gives you the information you need to make some good decisions, especially given the pace of change that we're about to encounter. Things are going to happen very rapidly, and all of this stuff is about getting on top of things so that you can make the best decisions going forward as we start to turn around. Number three is your rent too high. That's been in the news a lot. I mean, it's a great time to negotiate with your landlord, to talk to your landlord, rather than just saying, hey, I'm not paying or I can't pay. There's probably a middle ground there, and there's certainly a government program in place that can help with relief. Because as we know, once recovery starts to happen, landlords really don't like to negotiate rents at all, and they like to hold you to that lease. So get them while you can, and maybe you can put something in place not only for now, but something that has terms that are negotiable for the recovery period, and maybe even longer term. Based on your experience, you can pitch something that will end up with some form of rent reduction that is more manageable going forward. And the final thing is, have you taken advantage of government programs? And I mean, I know there's different kind of perceptions about all the different government things that are going on, but the reality is there are a bunch of programs, and I've seen some of the surveys coming back and companies saying, well, it's too much trouble, it's too complicated, that sort of thing. Maybe you've got someone on staff who could take that on. It may not be a priority for you as CEO and owner, given all the other things that are going on, but maybe somebody in the administrative side can look at all these different programs, because the reality is when you add them all up, there's a significant help that can be brought to bear, whether it's people helping themselves through the CERB kind of employment insurance type benefit, or whether it's work sharing, reduction in payroll taxes, that sort of thing. When you add up all the programs, it really kind of is a solid base to not only survive, but come out of the crisis and maybe even have some cash in the bank to invest in renewed growth. So on that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad, and he's going to get into new business models and helping you think through. So now that we've got a pulse on things, we've got some action items that we can put in place today. Let's take a lens a little bit towards the future, and I'll pass it over to Brad.
Hey, Brad, you're muted.
There we go. Everybody hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Good, good. So thanks very much, Steven. Appreciate that. And of course, Steven requires no qualification here whatsoever. He's obviously, you know, he's very knowledgeable, and in his position, he needs to know these things, and he's done a great job leading the way with some of these things. So certainly appreciate that. The person who probably needs to qualify here a little bit is myself. And so basically, I started my first company when I was 13 years old, and was able to convince another local kid when I was 17 and going off to university to buy the services off me and take that over. And that was sort of the start of my entrepreneurial journey. And I'm 46 years old now. I've done business in 37 countries around the world, and I've done some really cool things. And I've made some big mistakes along the way as well. And so the reality was, as soon as I looked at the COVID-19 situation, pretty instantly, because I'm a mentor at Innovation Guelph, I had the podium to be able to speak to a bunch of people, and with my great the folks that run Innovation Guelph and the leadership there, they were very gung-ho to get and help the community. And one of the things that I realized right away was all the great stories I have of the cool things that I did and the things that I've done with my businesses didn't mean much. What was really going to mean something through this was going to be me taking the lessons learned. And so I immediately went into what that was. And so in 2008, during the financial crisis, I made some mistakes. And the number one mistake that I made was not talking to people, not reaching out, not having good mentors, not having good advisors. Didn't mean that people didn't want to help me. I just wasn't listening. And that was a big challenge. And so I started to think to myself, what's something that people are pretty familiar with, and that they can have a dashboard view of. And then if I'm helping people, I can make sure that I can just spend a few minutes with them or an hour with them, and I'm leaving them in a better position than from where they started. And so, luckily we already have this great thing called a business canvas. And all I did was I sort of changed it around a little bit to be a COVID response canvas. And so one of the very first things, you're all seeing it on the screen right now, I think. One of the first things that I found about working with the canvas was that the part that's not on the screen was where I always had to start. So the one thing I've learned over the last 30 years has been people, and particularly business leaders who have balanced, fulfilled lives, tend to build really valuable businesses. Sort of tried, tested, and true. Doesn't mean you can't build a valuable business without, but they seem to do really, really well. For me, when I'm working with clients, I really struggle, whether it's at Innovation Guelph or anywhere else, I really struggle if I don't get to know the business leader a little bit, because that is such a key component to the business. So what I first would do with any of these calls, and I've now done a little over 200 calls in the last, give or take, 10 weeks with different business owners in all different industries. And it's really been an amazing experience for me. And I think that's part of the reason why, once again, to qualify why I'm on this call today, is because I now have quite a bit of experience with dealing with businesses that are going through COVID. And even though I have the experience from 2008, COVID is a different monster altogether. So the number one thing I'll say to business leaders is make sure to take a deep breath and a few moments to think about what you're going through right now, because this is absolutely the best business experience you will ever get. For years, they're going to be writing books about what COVID-19 was and how it did to what it did to our business community. So I always start with people, and I start person first. So the first thing I would do on a call is I would use this canvas, and I would put it up on the screen, just like I'm doing with all of you good folks. And I would just first ask them how they're doing. And that's the person first piece, making sure that they're doing okay, because that also would tell me what their headspace was. Where are they? Are they able to think through? And that would literally allow me, and I'll just sort of annotate on the screen here so that everybody can see when I'm jumping around a little bit here. I'll get my pointer out. And so what I would find is once I started with them, depending on who I was dealing with, and particularly when we're on these types of calls, generated by Innovation Guelph, or one of the centers across Ontario, if you're on one of these calls, you're sort of in rarefied air. You're already thinking in an innovative way. And so very quickly, the people that I would jump on with in those calls, we wouldn't be dealing with the situation of problems. We'd already be jumping into what can they offer during COVID-19. And so we could spend some time there. And this was a really sort of interesting process that we'd go through, where maybe the business owner was a little bit down. What I've found is every one of the calls that I got on, I realized very quickly that most people were going through some version of the Kubler-Ross grief cycle. And they were either in denial or anger or depression or bargaining or they were into full-blown acceptance. And what was really fun was sometimes I would start at denial, and by the end of an hour, we'd be into full-blown acceptance, and they're rocking and rolling. And those have been really, really fun and engaging stories. And I'm so looking forward to eventually meeting some of those people in person and seeing how that's gone, because it's really been rewarding for me. But even in the situation where maybe we start, and probably the best thing to do here is to get everybody to just sort of take a quick look at the canvas. And from the top left over, we go problem, solution. Then we go into the value proposition during COVID-19. Then we go into, I'm just going to move my thing here. Your unfair advantage, the value proposition after, or I like to prefer to say beyond COVID-19, because I don't know that there's going to be an after. Steven sort of alluded to that I'm trying to get people in the mindset of thinking beyond COVID-19 as opposed to after it or going back to normal. And that seems to help business leaders. The next one is to delight their clients. Then I really like to get people focused on key metrics, like what are we going to be doing that's going to let us know that some of these other things are working. Government partnership. So very early on, I would go from talking to the person to right into here. This is what everybody wanted to know. What funding can I get? What do I have access to? What am I eligible for? What are the risks? It was a big question that was asked. What are the risks to accepting that funding? And then I would get into some of how your channels might be affected. And then lastly, on this row, we would get into beyond COVID-19 and your early adopters. So these two are really intrinsically linked, the beyond COVID-19 and the early adopters, because you may find that businesses that weren't prepared to do business with you before, and this is something that's been really fun, that people are getting calls back from people they never expected before. Customers, Steven talked about it in his, take a stretch, take a leap, because just because we assume that somebody's not open for business or not willing to think about things, more often than not, we're seeing that they actually don't have that much going on, and we're effectively being able to get calls. So it's really a good time to take a bit of a leap. And at the end of the day, what do you have to lose? It's nothing but a phone call or an email or something along those lines. But it is amazing how those emails are getting answered now. And then just cost structure and revenue streams. To be totally frank with everybody, I really don't get down to the bottom two very often. And this tells me that what we're doing is really working. Because wherever that person is in that group, in that grief cycle, we spend almost all of our time right here. Value proposition during COVID, and then we quickly shift over to here. And there's been some exciting stories, and if I ever talk to any of you, and hopefully we'll do something when we're beyond all of this, where we will share some of the great stories that came out of this. We're spending most of our time right here, whereas it used to be here in the government problems and partnerships. And then with non-innovation Guelph folks, we will spend a little bit more time, or I will spend a little bit more time on the problems. Because for some folks, if they're not innovators, for example, some of the chambers of commerce that I do some presentations for, seems like they're not quite as innovative, and so their thought processes aren't quite as far along yet. So we do spend a little bit of time dealing with problems and solutions. But as Mickey said, we're going to give this canvas to everybody that's on this call, and you'll have free access to it. And I think she'll send it out as a PDF, or put it on the Innovation Guelph site. So what we find is we end up jumping around from here. So we may have decided that cash flow is a problem, so we end up into government partnerships. Or, the problem could be that we have no more customers whatsoever. And so we get into the value proposition during. And not to get into depth with any one particular client, but I would say certainly about 65% of the clients, once you spend some time with somebody else, and it doesn't have to be with me, quite literally take this canvas, find somebody that you trust, that you have a relationship with, that maybe had some experience from 2008 in the financial crisis, and just sit with them and do it for each other. It's a really great time to just get out of your own head, and believe me, that call will be probably well received. And if you think, oh, well, I kind of know the way everything's going to go, that's the trap that I fell into 2008. And I think for some entrepreneurs, that's the trap we fall into, right? We are the boss. We chose to run a business because, you know, we are the boss, and we'd like to be the boss. And so we like to have all the answers. But in a time of crisis, if you want to find the opportunity, the first step is you have to figure out that you don't have all the answers. You shouldn't have all the answers. And now is the best time. What I like to say is to be the dumbest guy in the room and surround yourself with people that really know what's going on. So a lot of what we do in the value proposition during is we've been able to have them just not pivot, because we certainly have had a lot of those businesses that have started creating disinfectants or masks and these types of things. Those are really heroic stories, and that's where we get into the value proposition and how their unique value proposition is can be even go beyond COVID. But what we're doing here is more just a slight shift, small shift. What could you do with your existing business and just think it a different way? And that's the beauty of having somebody else to talk to about it, is that they will actually look at your business in a different way, particularly if they're outside of industry, if they're from a different industry altogether. It seems like it really works. And I have a pretty good sample size now of people that I've just personally handed this to, and they've created it on their own. And they would tell you that they've spent some time and had some good experience, very strong experience. And we've had people that their business has gone from completely shut down, hopeless is what I'd say they were, to, my gosh, I actually have a huge business opportunity right now. And man, that's really exciting. I really, really enjoy those calls. And then for the other folks, it might be that, maybe now it's just a great time, as Steven said, to spend some time on a business plan, maybe on your financials, like maybe a bit of marketing, some sales, like building your brand is something you can do now, because this is when people ask you or decide what they think of you, is how you handle these types of things. And you see it, you hear it on the radio, you see it on TV, you see a lot of marketing on social media, the companies that are trying to build their brand, and that comes from a very good value place. So think about that in that area. And then the beyond COVID, or if we go into the unfair advantage, this is where we start to get into thinking about beyond COVID. And one of the number one things that I've realized, and I'm sharing this with anybody who will listen, is a market advantage for anybody going forward is going to be your attention to health and safety. And you are permanently in partnership now with, even deeper, with your clients, your customers, the government, and your business. So you have to take a look at things from a full 360 view and start to make some decisions about what's going to give us an advantage in the marketplace. And the big one seems to be so far is, how are you handling health and safety? Are your employees going to come back and decide they're uncomfortable there because you haven't planned properly in advance? So you cannot wait right now. If you're waiting for the government to wave the flag and say, let's go, it's the wrong thing to do. You need to start planning for some of these things yourself, and make sure that you're talking to people who are doing it right now, because when you start to get out into the marketplace, you're going to realize that, oh my gosh, by doing that, my clients are coming back. They know that we care about what's going on. My employees know that we care about them. So our brand and our culture is really well structured. The government we're satisfying all their needs. And in fact, maybe we're driving some of the government programs. When I say that, I mean the health and safety programs. Talk to your MP, let them know, this is what I think I'm going to need to reopen my business. These are the things that I think we're going to require. That's being part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. And then in your own business, make sure your liability is in check. Make sure you've got your contract squared away. Make sure you know exactly what's going on. Great time to talk to your attorney or your lawyer and just make sure that things are squared up there. Understand that we've entered into a world now where you're going to have another cost line in your business that is going to be health and safety. And this is something that some people don't necessarily understand just yet. So I get into it when we talk about the government partnership, but people have a tendency to think, oh, well, maybe I won't qualify, or if I take the government grants, maybe I'll have a better year than I thought. Don't forget, you're going to have additional cost items that you aren't expecting. And the big one is going to be health and safety. So as we get people beyond COVID, and that's really exciting, that's where we're getting people now. So the people that I've met with 3 weeks ago, they may not have been prepared to get beyond COVID. They're getting there now. As the government's starting to open some things up, you're starting to see people say, okay, I'm there. Now there will be people that are a bit of laggards in that, and that they're still concerned. But I find if we go through the first 4 steps, then they are not quite so concerned. And if you're somebody, like I talked to a good friend of mine yesterday who has some concerns for a business partner that has a different way of looking at things and is concerned about the health and safety aspect of it. Well, for that person, now you're actually taking care of their needs as well. And that is part of your business. So once we get into beyond COVID, now it may have been a carryover from the during, but now you're able to start thinking about, okay, what's my market opportunity? What am I doing? How am I starting to market into that? What's my competition doing? Do I need to increase my prices in order to accommodate? Do I need to decrease my prices? And do I actually have whatever I've been doing during COVID, has that become my new business? I've met with some people where I've literally had the conversation with them where I had to say to them, folks, it looks like this is your new business. Your profitability is much better. You seem to enjoy it more, but they needed somebody else to share that with them. And so it's, once again, you'll be hearing that I'm pretty excited about a lot of this stuff. Certainly I'm not excited about what we're going through, but I'm excited with like the human condition of what people are capable of and how they're responding to it with just a little nudge and with some support. So into I won't go through absolutely everything here today. I won't get into the final things because I know Steven has some more things to share and what he has to say is really important. But I can't emphasize enough the idea right now of delighting your clients. And these two are really tied, like your value proposition during COVID and delighting your clients. And if anybody doesn't know what I mean by that, I mean, do whatever you can. If you have some spare time on your hands where you're not in a Zoom meeting trying to learn about these things, get on the phone, send your clients messages, think about their business one step beyond what you should, and use your innovative mind. We've done this and just had incredible success with new clients being acquired because the strategic thinking of the business leader that reached out to his client has made the other business leader think a little bit differently. So that's been fun. The key metrics as well. I'm a big metrics guy. I didn't always used to be. Certainly in 2008, you wouldn't have caught me anywhere close to caring about metrics because I was a passionate business owner. But I think, for anybody who's run businesses, you eventually realize that that's a big part of the business. And so we want to make sure that we're checking on what our metrics are, what we decided we were going to try to do. And once again, you'll see some moving between the value proposition during what metrics we're trying, because some of the things you might try may not work. Same with over here. We want to make sure that we're validating that the things that we're doing are good. Back to the government partnerships. We may circle around a little bit on this because now we have to start thinking about paying back some of that debt. So that's why it's where it is on the canvas. New channels that may be opening up. We've had great success with people recognizing that there's actually new channels available to them. And that's been really something that people were not expecting, that reaching out to a channel that they didn't think they had, or taking a step back and starting to marketing into different channels. And then the beyond COVID, the early adopters. So this one I really enjoy. And as I said, these two are very well tied together. See my pointer there. Because for anybody who's ever read the book Crossing the Chasm, we're sort of in a chasm situation here right now, right? And so you want to look into who are the innovators, who are the adopters, who are going to be the first people to move in our economy, and starting to target some of those folks. Those are key people to getting your business up and running again, and off the canvas. Or what we're seeing is, now having multipliers of higher revenue as a result. And so I say to those folks who maybe have taken some wage subsidies and things like that to this point, we're going to be happy to pay some of that money back if we have to, if we're going to double the revenue of the business as a result of just a small shift. So at the end of the day, my big takeaway for everybody here is just to make sure that everybody takes some time to stop and think. Talk to your innovation center. I mean, most of you folks would have come on this call as a result of being involved somehow in an innovation center. And I've done business in 37 countries around the world. When I started my first couple of companies, I did not do anything with innovation centers, and it's a huge regret. So get on the phone with your innovation center. Mickey's email will be here. And if you're from somewhere else, she'll introduce you to your local one if that's what needs to happen, because my 2 cents is that these are going to be the places that are going to really help our economy get fired back up again, and it's something to be excited about. So use the business canvas, the COVID response campus, meet with mentors or advisors or a friend who has some business experience one-on-one. What I like to say is you can physically isolate, just don't mentally isolate. So that's all I have. If anybody wants me to get into some of these things, I assure you that Steven is far more qualified to get into cost structures and revenue streams. But we certainly can chat about that as well. This has gone very similar to what my calls go. I don't want to take up too much time, and those are less exciting things to me. And we want to get people thinking beyond COVID. So I'll pass it back over to Steven now, and he can give me heck maybe for taking too long.
All right. Okay, that was awesome, Brad. Thank you. Like, amazing, and I hope everyone got so much out of that. That it's a conversation. That's the creativity. Brad just took you through the creative exercise that everyone, as entrepreneurs, we all go through that at some point. And in crisis mode, maybe we're focused too much on the stuff that I've been doing and not enough on the creative part. So the reality is, it's both things, because the environment is changing literally day by day. So let's just go into turning it around. So now we've got the dashboard, we've got the early warning signs so that you're ready. We've talked about different operational things that you can do literally today with the help of your team. And now Brad has given you kind of a pathway to the future. So these are 4 key sort of, I don't know, attitudinal factors, if you want to call them that, on turning it around. One is setting a goal and committing to the fact that you're going to come out of this healthy, and you're going to do the work and provide the leadership so that you can, your business can survive and thrive going into the next quarter, going into next year. So setting that goal, reducing your expectations, whether we know it or not, in terms of just and it's been well documented now, the kind of the mental health challenge and the pressure that we feel, whether it's consciously or a little bit subconsciously, it's there. So let's not put too much pressure on ourselves, reduce our expectations, do the work, but don't look for immediate results when it's something that you're planning out that's a little bit longer term. Seize the opportunity. Brad talked a lot about that. But right now, today, focus on survival so you can see the good things coming out of that. And here's your action agenda. So it's doing the canvas, and then there are a bunch of things right here, reviewing your supplier commitments, what bills do you have to pay right now, eliminate waste, I'll come back to that in just a second, knowing where your cash is, that customer communication Brad talked about, finding the opportunity, reorganizing your staff, getting people to kind of come back to work, maybe things, obviously they can be done at home, but might be a little bit out of the norm. You never know, you might find out people's skills, talents that you didn't even know they had. Could be social media, could be building that website until you kind of ask and engage with everyone, you just find out great things. Involving staff in decisions, so the communication, we talk about finding new customers, and then of course communicating with your banker or communicating with your government agency or somebody who can get you in touch with the funds that you need, because the funds are out there. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging than we hope, but at the same time it is out there and getting at that. Here's the waste slide, and this, when we think of lean operations, it's all around identifying and eliminating waste. And this again is part of your action agenda, is how you're doing things. If you've ever thought of making a change, reorganizing, streamlining, now is the time to do it. Implementing a better way to manage your inventory, to get product and service out the door quicker, inbound customer service, whatever it happens to be, is looking at it from the standpoint of how am I doing things today? What could I do better? And does it actually eliminate, and we use the word waste. I mean, it's not always the kind of waste we see as being physical things lying around. It could be process related, how much time we spend on a task. But looking at stuff from the standpoint of, by addressing this and being really aggressive with it, that I can actually make long-term change in my operations that pay off on the bottom line right away. And the last thing really is focus on people. And I think this is probably number one on everyone's mind. Brad touched on it, the health and safety, the value, the blood, sweat, and tears, the energy, people just showing up for work every day. In years past, right now, working from home and then coming back to work. It's really all about people and taking care of them and finding those hidden strengths and talents and just coming back stronger than you were when we kind of things broke up a couple months ago. So preparing for the race back, that's what it's all about. And the post-COVID-19, the canvas, Brad's full conversation, and then these key success factors around your operations and getting cash flowing, generating more revenue, taking advantage of those new revenue streams or channels, and at the same time reducing costs and really coming back leaner and stronger than when you were when we broke up. So really using this time productively and getting at it. And what I'd suggest is take, when you get these slides from Nikki, is take the discard the front ones, the informational ones that got us started, but look at all the ones that kind of have to do with business and your operations. Give a slide to everyone on your team and just say, hey, do you have any ideas? Come back and figure out and bring back to the team what we can do in each of these areas. I think if you can do that, you've basically put a check mark next to almost all the boxes, and you'll be ready to go. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mickey. I thank you so much on behalf of myself and Brad for your time and your attention. And I hope that, even if you only take one thing or two things away from this hour that we spent together, you've advanced it. And that's what we call return on investment, getting ahead of the game, getting out in front of the recovery. And like I said, just being stronger than you were when you left. So back to you, Mickey.
Great, thanks. So we would love to open up for some questions. And I don't know who wants to start, but I'm sure with all of you still left on the call that there's some questions. So you can either unmute. I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but we'll make sure if you put your hand up that we will get to you. And then you can also send us questions in the chat, just simply to us or to I or to all of them. Wes, do you have any questions that you've received?
I do have a couple here. Let me just
Awesome.
have a look. I could get a question here. If I have an idea, product, innovation, or way to help, what can I do?
Okay, I'll take that one. We have a fund in Ontario, not a federal government one, but one that we've implemented. It's called the Ontario Together Fund. And right now it's funded to the tune of $50 million. That may increase going on, we don't know, but there's a significant pot of money there. And it's for exactly those things that Wes mentioned. And there are different streams for the Ontario Together Fund. So if you have a manufacturing facility that has some extra capacity or idle time, and you think that reconfiguring or retooling around things like creating personal protective equipment like face shields or masks or gloves or gowns, if that's something that you want to get into, then the Ontario Together Fund is the place to apply. And basically it starts with on a website, filling out a kind of brief form about what your idea is, what you propose, and how what your capabilities are around that, and then submitting it. So there's the manufacturing side, the personal protective equipment. There's also medical support like mental health challenges, counseling, that kind of thing. So part of the fund is being dedicated to helping frontline workers, families, people who are stressed out working at home, et cetera, helping them get through that. And what we're funding are organizations that provide that sort of counseling and support. So that's another stream. And the third is just general ideas. And companies have different stuff that they might have cooking that really the COVID-19, call it, just looking at it from the standpoint of opportunity, where if you had a little bit of funding, and I'll give you an example, a company proposed creating a support table for ventilators. So on one side, we have these manufacturers who are stepping up and actually creating kind of that technical equipment. But on the other side is you need a stand, you need somewhere to put it. Does it roll? Is it an adjustable height? What kind of weight can it bear, et cetera? Those are sort of idea type things that are coming out of the manufacturing sector as well. Software for case management. So if you're more in the software innovation side, that's another thing that would fall into the Ontario Together Fund. And the one coaching I would say on that is to take kind of each step in the process very seriously, in the sense that if you're proposing an idea, that you're very clear about what its objectives are, what's in it for everyone, how you're kind of the best qualified or how you're highly qualified to actually deliver it. And if you can kind of always be focused in terms of providing clear information, that really increases your chances of being selected for procurement. And when I mean or funding, so the two ways of distributing the fund are, in some cases, the government will actually act on your behalf in terms of procuring or buying and distributing what you have, so in terms of orders. And the second might be just a fund in order that you can establish and bring your product or service to market.
And if I could just jump in on that, Steven. So this is, this is an area that I think most people in the country have known that there's the federal buy-sell that's going on, and certainly that's what I talked with a lot of my clients. But I know that there's been great receipt of this from clients, and they're getting very quick response times from the province as well, which is terrific. And fortunately, it's a great question for here, because Steven is the guy who handles this. And so I think sometimes we think that we submit things to the government and we're not sure if it gets heard. And I think Steven's made himself available to be personally involved in a lot of these things, and move them forward. So the website's great. I send a lot of most of my clients think of the federal procurement, and this is a little bit different, and we've had good response times and take up. So thanks, Steven.
And I'm just one of many. I mean, there's a large team dedicated to it, and you're right, Brad. The timing of it is a top priority, just to get things through the pipeline as quickly as possible and not have them kind of sit on someone's desk.
Yeah, oh, for sure. So a couple other questions have come in. We are looking at, sorry, my chat got ahead of me. One sec. We have, is now a good time to be hiring a sales rep? Your thoughts?
So from my perspective, I can take that. I would say this would have something to do with if you're, depending on the industry that you're in. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's certainly a good time. You may not even have to think about hiring them and starting to pay them, but starting to look at the market and and consider that, because they're going to be critical to the return. You cannot be lying stagnant. And if you don't have a salesperson, if you've had to lay somebody off, or if you are not or didn't have a salesperson before and you know you're going to need one, there are great programs out there right now, depending on what industry. And if you can use a student, I know that a lot of the student programs, if you're reaching out to your MP and letting them know, even if you didn't apply for the student program in advance, that's a good opportunity. That's one type of salesperson. Obviously, that would depend on your industry. But I think that salespeople are going to be absolutely key to the transition and to get beyond COVID, particularly if you have a new concept, something that you've come up with during COVID, or if you're thinking beyond. It feels like that's something that's a good thing to do. But once again, a great topic to talk through with a mentor, advisor, a friend who has some experience.
I mean, just to add to that, Brad, like if you have the time to, if you're kind of serious about following through, in other words, you don't want to put something out there that you don't really have any intention of following up on it. But if you think that hiring a sales rep is something that was in your plan before, that you're thinking of bringing that back on the front burner, I mean, get the information out there. I saw something on LinkedIn yesterday, RBC, basically an open call for resumes, just saying, send us your resume. In other words, you're not applying for a job, don't send us a cover letter. And they're just basically sending out seeing what's out there. And that's certainly an approach. But of course, with sales reps, it's one of those definitely good people are hard to find type of things. And it's like buying a house today. If you wanted to buy a house, the problem is not your money so much as the sellers, and are there houses out there to buy? And it might be a little bit of that with salespeople, that maybe if you're going to do it, is to plan on a slightly extended process and work on that value proposition and some of the stuff that Brad touched on the canvas, so that when you find the right person, they can hit the ground running with what you have today, like your innovation, or bring that person in and give them the tools they need to hit the ground running. But it might be a little bit longer process than normal, just because we don't know who's kind of on the sidelines. Good people are always busy, and so there are definitely challenges now as there would have been before.
I'll also just share a little quick tidbit of information if anybody's looking for some kind of training. There's actually one of our clients that has set up a B2B tech sales academy. And they're doing some training for salespeople. So if you do bring somebody on, it's a great resource for them to do their training, and it's virtual, of course. So it would keep them rather busy too, while this is still going on. So that might actually be a really great resource for some of you looking to hire during this time. In addition, we have another question here. Don has asked, where can we find business models for partnerships and joint ventures? Good question, hey?
Yeah. I mean, there are sites out there, like Googling business models, and the business model, the COVID-19 canvas that Brad introduced is based on the original business model canvas, which is from a company called Strategizer. And Osterwelder was the author of it, etc. But they have a website that has a whole bunch of different examples of business models, and how to work through that process. And it's a little bit academic in the sense that it doesn't talk to, you know, the Guelph innovation community, that sort of thing, but just in general, how maybe it's more how to apply the Canvas. So there are resources out there online. Going to the source, I find, is a good start.
Yeah, and this would be, once again, a great example, Donna, for talking to your innovation center. So whatever your local innovation center is, I mean, there are literally people there with 30 years of experience, good, bad, and the ugly, that can help you think through some of these ideas. There's always upsides to partnerships and downsides to partnerships and joint ventures, and there is, every one of those is completely reliant on, you know, the person first, you, what you can handle and what you're capable of delivering, and then the other person as well. And I always say to people, start with exit. So you know, understand that one day that partnership is, like every business in the world, is going to end, hopefully with a big sale and lots of money. And you just want to make sure you understand that when you do that, what looks better, partnership or whatever structure suits you and will suit the other person, and that you can effectively exit out of and do well. Yeah, so that would be, I would always start with the innovation centers. Now, I'm a convert, so.
Nice.
I've got another question here. Let me just have a look there. Okay. Sorry, just a moment. Actually, if you have another one, Mickey, I'm just tracking down that question here now. So.
Okay, sure do. Is now a good time to start our new business in renewable and clean energy integration with other industries such as oil and gas and telecom? Can we count on the government support in this kind of a situation?
Well, I mean, that's such a broad question. I mean, putting the whole government support thing aside, that's kind of more like with Brad, you gotta, like, there's no kind of open door to walk through for the government to work on those things. But of course, it starts with your local innovation center, and then the contacts they have, and moving up through that. But I mean, energy is in a state of flux. I think you probably saw Elizabeth May just yesterday saying oil is dead, and they're basically, the Green Party was being critical of the federal government's plan to support the oil and gas sector out west. And so just from that alone, when you kind of dig into it, that's one side of it in terms of renewables and everything. But the other side of it is the cost of energy for renewables is still significantly higher than it is for fossil fuels. And they already have done the kind of forecasting in terms of the recovery of the oil and gas sector, in terms of now the production's being shut off, inventories are being consumed, and they can almost forecast out when the line crosses back towards undersupply, and then of course those producers will start coming online. But I think this whole oil and gas exercise of the last 6 to 12 months has proven that there's virtually unlimited supply. So it's really hard to know. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you got to do your homework and take what Brad has said about reaching out to people and doubling that, or even more, in terms of how many people you have to talk to, and really finding where the opportunity is, because there's no doubt there's a market for renewable solar panels, electric vehicles, that kind of thing, and that's growing and growing all the time globally. But at the same time, not to kind of take a step sideways and find yourself stuck in kind of that oil and gas resupply, where you lose time and valuable money trying to navigate through that, when in fact there might be clearer opportunity that you find out through other people. I mean, that's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that as well, Steven, because I agree completely, and I'll take it from like the entrepreneur's standpoint here too. So I believe, and so my branding guru Andres Pone would love me to say this: we are entering the golden age of starting your own business. That's one of the opportunities that I see coming out of all of this. And starting a business is going to be a great thing to do, but people have to understand that what you're starting is a business, not owning a job. And to do that, that's why the innovation centers are there. You'll keep hearing me say that. It's not because I'm working with Innovation Guelph. It is because I wish that I would have gone through that process before, because the experience is all there. So if you're intimidated at all about starting a business, and I think renewable energy is wonderful, and go for it, but you don't have to figure all of that out. Believe it, there's people that are sitting waiting to take your call, organized by great people like Mickey and Linda and Anne at Innovation Guelph, as well as the other innovation centers that are just waiting to take your call to introduce you to somebody who's going to take you to the next step. I think for a lot of business owners, they think, oh, I have to know everything from start to finish about running a business. And to me, that's where it is the golden age. If you just have a business idea and you want to flesh it out and not empty your bank account and your life savings to do it, the innovation centers are great. They're going to give you a very balanced view of your business, and they might have a program that can help you immediately, and eventually that may lead to funding, but they have, like, running a business is not new. It's been around forever, so you don't have to do all that yourself. I just caution anybody to make sure that they're thinking about running their business as a business, not a job.
I think the innovation centers that we have here in Canada, so not just even here in Ontario, but I'll speak for us in this Ontario region. We work hard every day at trying to find the right connections and programs, and I mean, that's what we do. This isn't supposed to be a commercial for us by any means, but that absolutely, talk to people. You're not alone in any of this. That's what we're all here for. Wes, did you find that question?
I did, yes.
Excellent.
So given that it is very likely that working internationally is going to be a challenge, what's the best way to connect with those customers that are outside of Canada?
So I can take that one if you like.
Sure.
So I don't, myself personally, depending on the industry that you're in, I don't necessarily see the limitations to the international market. In fact, I see that there's going to be a little bit of an opening up, but depending on what you're in. If you're in manufacturing, yeah, there's going to be some challenges there, but in many other industries, I think you're going to start to see, selling into other countries, because everybody is grown accustomed to video conferencing, and that is the standard now. The big challenge is going to be, in my opinion, closing deals digitally, and big deals, and having meetings where you're doing large closes digitally. That's, typically speaking, these things happen. And so I'm not overly concerned that that they won't happen, because I like where we've gone from a technology standpoint. But certainly if the plan was to, you need somebody on the ground to do sales in a foreign country, if that's what you're talking about, certainly that's a challenge. But I think there's ways to mitigate that risk by starting to adopt some techniques and using tech. So back to the COVID canvas of what you can be doing now, great time to invest in tools that are going to help you sell into wherever you need to sell. And if that's virtual structuring that allow you to give them the next best thing, then it's a great time to invest in some of those things. And that's what I've been suggesting with some of the government funding that people are getting, that it's a great opportunity to invest in those types of things.
And if I could add to that is, you also, I think I'm a great believer that the supply chain innovates and will innovate. And when you think of travel, maybe in the past we over traveled We had people who are kind of in the air all the time, or maybe looking back rationally, we could have cut that back and focused more on the close and less on the presentation. And coming back to Brad's point that maybe we'll have those innovations, and I suspect we will have those innovations that'll kind of close the intermediate gaps, that the airlines will find a way to allow travelers to travel safely. And maybe it's going to be kind of a phase 1, phase 2 type thing where travel for tourism takes a little bit of a back seat while the airlines and different people in the people supply chain, where they innovate in terms of health and safety, personal protection on airlines, maybe ticket prices for business travelers double in price, I don't know. But so we have half the trips at twice the cost. It ends up being the same. There's also agents and distributors in all these foreign markets for literally every sector. And so finding them, and so the innovation in these foreign markets for us will be via our trade agreements. And we still have trade offices. Ontario has, I think, 12 or 13 trade offices around the world. The Government of Canada, through the Trade Commissioner Service, has, I think, 165 offices, country offices, which is covering almost the entire globe. So they're finding a way to do and support businesses better as well. So it might be that things that we kind of took for granted and took upon ourselves, maybe now we do through our partnerships, through Trade Commissioner Service, and also maybe leaning on them to help us identify reputable agents and distributors who can make those kind of preliminary contacts, do the legwork early on, and then our job is to close the deal, and that the travel industry has a way to facilitate that.
Great, thanks, guys.
Yeah, I've got another question here, actually. What are the best resource that may support a manufacturing business in the area of innovative materials for the construction industry? And is it a good time to start?
Can you repeat the first part of that, Wes?
Yeah, absolutely. What are the best resources that may support a manufacturing business in the area of innovative materials for the construction industry? And is it a good time to start?
Wow, that's a great question. I'd say it's never a bad time to start something that's innovative in construction, because that's one area where we didn't really see a slowdown, and you can kind of do your own prognosticating about the future of construction and building. Originally, when the COVID thing happened, and I was tracking it fairly closely, it was like, oh, projects will die, and we won't have the same demand for residential commercial real estate. And it's hard to say where that shift is going to happen. You can almost imagine that with businesses maybe not having the same open door presence, that there'd be reduced demand for commercial, which would kind of impact the construction industry, and people maybe moving out of cities into the suburbs, which would impact kind of the downtown core type of stuff. But so far, those indicators haven't really been said that there's any doom and gloom on the horizon for that sector. And so therefore, I would say innovative materials, as long as they're, again, it's kind of like that energy, renewables versus oil and gas, and at what cost can you bring those innovative materials to market, and what kind of benefits do they procure in terms of maybe energy savings or R values for the landlord, that if the building is made with that, can they get more rent, et cetera? I mean, different considerations.
And I'll just add to that. So particularly that this is where my 2 cents would be that if you have an innovative company that's providing the innovative materials, and they are going to be first to market, because right now we know that supplies are more challenging to get access to. If that innovator that has that material can get it to you, your customer may be satisfied to pay a little bit more to make that happen, to reopen that project and keep things moving along. I know the construction folks have really struggled with supply. And so if they're doing it, so if we went back to the canvas and we looked at it and we said, okay, well, so who are early adopters? Well, the reality is your early adopters may now be people that are willing to pay a little bit more for something because it's available. And because, you know, they may not have had as great as sales, but they may have stockpiling because they're just entering the marketplace. So we've seen a little bit of that already, and particularly if it's manufactured in Canada, it makes it much easier, and you might even be able to buy direct. So some of these things seem to be happening, which is exciting.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I think we have time for maybe one more question. So I just want to ask, I'm just going to acknowledge, Pam sent in a note about not seeing anything on the website, specifically for the Ontario Together Fund, about opportunities for mental health services and innovative service delivery. So Pam, what we're going to do is make sure that we email all of that information out in the group. But Stephen, if you could quickly just talk about that, and then we'll do one more question, and then we'll do a wrap, if that's okay.
Yeah, I in terms of the website, it's been a while since I've been there, but I don't think they're sort of differentiating between the different, what we call internally streams. I'm not sure there's that differentiation on the website that you would see. I think it's more putting your idea or your proposal via the web page, and then it comes inside, and then they stream it depending on whether it's one of those things. So I think that might explain
So
why.
it's the same proposal. You fill out the form, and then on the other end, you guys sort it and figure it out on your end.
That's right.
Okay, so perfect. So hopefully, Pam, that answers your question. And then we have time for one more question, and then we have to wrap just because of time. You're welcome, Pam. She said thank you. Wes, did you have that one last question?
Yes. So can you speak about innovative ways to reach customers for food and beverage businesses that have short shelf life products? Say that 5 times fast.
So I can start that because I've dealt with a bunch of these. Innovation Guelph happens to do a lot of agri-tech and food service, so it's part of it that really interests me. Now, I'm not by any stretch the expert in food, so you're going to hear me say again, you know, reach out to Mickey because literally Guelph is the place for agri-tech and food based businesses. From what I've seen across the province, from an innovation standpoint, and even across Canada, I would say. So 2 things. One, they have the food experts that can talk to you about that. 2, it's just creating the business model that will support it, because, you know, some of these things we'll have to consider as part of our planning in advance of the business. So this would be something that you'd need to take into consideration probably before. So you're during COVID, and then, you know, is there going to be an opportunity beyond COVID as well? You know, what does this all mean? So when I'm working with the food clients, a lot of them that are doing really well right now are going direct to customer, and they're finding ways to do that, and doing it on large scale, which is interesting. So not sure if that exactly answered your question, because as I said, my sense is that it probably requires a larger conversation, and I'm not the food expert, but we certainly have folks at Innovation Guelph that would know this inside and out.
Absolutely. And I think I'll make my email rather open for you guys to send more questions my way, and I'll try to my best to get to them and get you answers as fast as possible. But I think kind of in that food related question of creating kind of packaged goods and expiry dates and what do you do, and I think that's kind of, if you can take some time to sit down and go through that business model canvas and start asking yourself some of the questions that Stephen and Brad have brought up today, I think you'll likely find some answers, because I think it's really important to figure out what can you do, and I think you've likely got a lot of those answers inside, but going through the process of working through the different stages and the different questions will help you get that answer out of you. So on that note, I know it is 11:27, so I promised to have you all out of here in good time at 11:30. So I just want to say a quick thank you to Stephen and Brad for this discussion today. We learned all kinds of lessons and, getting us informed the importance of resiliency and being focused and planning, knowing our numbers, asking ourselves some tough questions. I mean, they're all very, very important lessons for us. The Ontario government is listening to what entrepreneurs are asking for, and they're open to help more where it makes most sense to do so. So we thank you for opening up these lines of communications, because it's so, so important for Ontario businesses, especially during such challenging times, really to be heard. We also thank all of you in the audience today for asking your questions and being open to this conversation. So as an entrepreneur, it is more important now than ever to connect with a mentor, an EIR, a more experienced peer who can help you focus on your goals and to talk with you. You're not in this alone. Going through something like this can feel isolating, so I encourage you to reach out to organizations like the ones that we partnered with today. The Ontario government, our friends at Invest in Guelph, the Business Centre Guelph Wellington, the Spark Centre in Oshawa, the Launch Lab in Kingston, the Accelerator Centre in Waterloo, or any one of the over 100 Canadian accelerators, incubators, and innovative centres in our vast network. So if you do need to get connected, do send me a note and I will try to make some personal connections for you. At Innovation Guelph, we will continue to find ways to support you through these challenging times, with workshops and seminars and panels and opportunities. And we're working remotely, but we're still working for you. So reach out to me by email if you have anything further. It is Mickey, M-I-C-K-E-Y, no M-O-U-S-E, .campo @innovationguelph.ca. So if you need any support or you would like to be introduced to any one of the organizations I mentioned here today, please do reach out. IG's talented staff and team of over 60 industry specialists and mentors like Brad are willing to help you through this time, and collectively between the 7 organizations represented here today on this call, we can and we will work together to connect you to someone you should be talking with, because truly we know we are stronger together. And with that, I appreciate you sharing your morning with us.